The photograph slipped from Keela's trembling hands, scattering across the floor like evidence of a crime she never saw coming. Min Jae with another woman. Smiling. Close. Intimate. The note that came with them was even worse. He never stopped wanting me. You were just convenient. He's only waiting until the brat is old enough to throw you back to whatever slum you crawled from. 7 months. 7 months of building a life together, of believing he chose her, of thinking the cold CEO who'd defied his entire family actually loved her. And now this. Her chest constricted violently. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room spun as betrayal tore through her with physical force. No, 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 no! The scream ripped from her throat. Keela's vision blurred, her chest constricting with the kind of pain that had nothing to do with her damaged heart, and everything to do with the man she'd trusted completely. She hit the floor hard. Olive's confused cries the last sound she heard before darkness swallowed her whole. Somewhere across town, Min Jae was completely unaware that the woman he loved was being rushed to a hospital. Unaware that she'd just seen photos that destroyed everything they'd built. Unaware that someone had calculated exactly how to shatter their relationship with surgical precision. The question was, would Keela even wake up? Her heart condition had nearly killed her once before. And if she did survive this, how do you convince someone you didn't betray them when the evidence looks that damning? When the photos are real, the woman is real, and the only thing that's fake is the story being told? Hey, besties, this story is going to have you hooked from the first word to the last, and trust me, you will want to see every single moment of it. If you are ready, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this story with others. Your support means the world and keeps these stories coming. Now, let's get into it. The silence in the penthouse was the kind that preceded storms. Keela stared at the numbers on her phone screen, her jaw tight, her fingers gripping the device hard enough that her knuckles showed pale against her dark skin. Across the living room, Min Jae sat with his tablet, his attention seemingly absorbed in whatever document he was reviewing, but the tension in his shoulders suggested he knew exactly what was coming. On the floor between them, Olive played with her building blocks, oblivious to the electricity crackling in the air. At 1 year old, she was all chubby hands and delighted babbling, her thick curls bouncing as she knocked over her carefully stacked tower and squealed with joy. 7 months. 7 months since that night on the balcony when they'd kissed and chosen each other. 7 months since Keela had recovered enough to return to teaching. Since Min Jae had rearranged his entire life around being present for their daughter. Since they'd built something that looked perfect from the outside. But perfection, Keela had learned, often hid fractures beneath its polished surface. She set her phone down on the coffee table with deliberate care. We need to talk. Min Jae looked up, his dark eyes wary. About what? About this. Keela gestured vaguely at the space around them, at the penthouse that wasn't hers, at the life that felt increasingly like it belonged to someone else. About the fact that I've been working for months now, and you won't let me contribute to anything. Keila, we've discussed this. No. Her voice was measured but firm. You've dismissed this. Every time I try to pay for groceries, you wave me off. Every time I suggest splitting household costs, you act like I've insulted you. I have a salary, Min Jae. A good one. But you won't let me use it. Min Jae set his tablet aside, genuine confusion crossing his features. I don't understand why this is a problem. I have more than enough to take care of you and Olive. Why would I want you to struggle financially when I can provide everything you need? The word provide landed between them like a stone. Because I'm not a child who needs providing for, Keila said, her frustration building. I'm a grown woman with my own career, my own income. But every single decision in this house defaults to your money solving it. The car service, Olive's supplies, the enrollment at that elite learning center I didn't even know you were considering until you told me it was already arranged. That center has the best early childhood development program in Seoul. That's not the point. Keela stood, needing movement to channel the energy coursing through her. The point is, you didn't consult me. You just handled it. Like you handle everything. Min-jae's expression shifted, his tone taking on a defensive edge. I thought I was making things easier for you. You're recovering, working full-time, raising Olive. I didn't want you to have the additional stress of finances. So instead, you've made me completely dependent on you. The words came out sharper than she'd intended, but Kayla couldn't pull them back. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To have no agency in my own life? To feel like I'm living in someone else's house, spending someone else's money, making decisions only when they're deemed unimportant enough for me to handle? That's not fair. Min-jae stood as well, his control visibly slipping. This is your house too. I've never made you feel like a guest. Haven't you? Keela's voice rose despite her attempts to stay calm. Your name is on everything. The lease, the accounts, the car service, Olive's enrollment papers. I exist here in the margins, Min-jae. I'm the woman you're sleeping with, the mother of your child, but I have no actual power in this relationship. Power? Min-jae's eyes flashed. Is that what this is about? Power. It's about equality. Kayla's locks shifted around her shoulders as she gestured emphatically. It's about feeling like a partner instead of someone being taken care of. I never asked you to save me. I never wanted to be a charity case. The word charity seemed to strike something raw in Min-jae. His jaw clenched, and when he spoke, his voice was tight with barely restrained emotion. After everything I've done, everything I've given up, you're accusing me of treating you like charity. What exactly have you given up? The question escaped before Kayla could stop it, and she saw Min-jae flinch. My family's approval. His voice was low, dangerous. My mother's respect. Business partnerships that fell apart when I refused the arranged marriage. The easy path that was laid out for me since birth. I gave all of that up for you, for Olive, for this family we're building. And you stand here questioning whether I see you as an equal? Olive had stopped playing, her dark eyes moving between her parents, sensing the tension, even if she couldn't understand it. I never asked you to give those things up, Keela said, her own voice shaking now. You made that choice. And maybe, if I'm being completely honest, part of me wonders if you're starting to resent it. If that's why you need to control everything, to make sure I know exactly how much I owe you. That's not what this is. Min-jae ran a hand through his hair, the gesture frustrated and weary. In my culture, providing for your family is how you show love. It's what a man is supposed to do. I'm taking care of the people I love, Keela. I don't understand why that makes you angry. Because love shouldn't come with a power imbalance. Keela's voice cracked. Because I need to feel like I'm contributing. Like I have a say. Like this life is something we're building together instead of something you're creating for me to exist inside of. The argument was escalating in ways neither of them seemed able to control. Words tumbled out, each one sharper than the last. 7 months of unspoken tension, finally finding voice. Neither of them heard the penthouse door open. Well, isn't this illuminating? The voice cut through their argument like a blade. Kayla and Min-jae froze simultaneously, turning toward the entryway, where Min-jae's mother stood with her arms crossed, her expression a carefully composed mask of disdain. She must have used the key Min-jae had never thought to take back, let herself in without announcement, and stood listening while they tore into each other. A harsh, humorless laugh escaped her perfectly painted lips. "Please, don't stop on my account. I was just beginning to enjoy watching the mask slip." Keela felt heat flood her face, humiliation and anger warring for dominance. Min-jae stepped forward, positioning himself slightly between them. "Mother, this isn't a good time." "Clearly." The older woman's gaze swept over Keela with unconcealed contempt, though I must say I'm grateful for the timing. It's refreshing to see her finally showing her true colors. "Excuse me?" Keela's voice was dangerously quiet. Min-jae's mother ignored her, addressing her words to the room at large with theatrical precision. "Ungrateful, demanding, never satisfied no matter how much is given. My son provides you with everything, accepts your child, defies his entire family to keep you comfortable, and still you stand here throwing tantrums about money." "That's enough." Min-jae's voice was steel, but his mother was just getting started. "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, she's proving everything I warned you about. She trapped you with that baby, moved into your home, and now she's complaining that you won't let her play house with her little teacher's salary. How much did you make last month, dear? What was it? 3 million won? 4? My son spends more than that on Olive's supplies alone." The casual cruelty in her tone, the way she said, "your child," and "that baby," instead of acknowledging Olive as her granddaughter, sent ice through Keela's veins. "Stop." Min-jae's voice was low, controlled, and absolutely final. "Stop talking. Now." His mother's eyes widened slightly, clearly unused to being addressed this way by her son. Min-jae moved fully between them, his body language protective and unmistakable. When he spoke again, every word was deliberate, weighted with meaning. "I am going to say this once, and I need you to hear me very clearly. You will never, ever speak to Keela in that manner again. Not in my home, not anywhere. She is the woman I love and the mother of my daughter. If you cannot show her the respect she deserves, then you are not welcome here." The silence that followed was absolute. Even Olive had gone quiet, her dark eyes wide as she watched her father. Min-jae's mother stared at her son as if seeing a stranger. Her carefully composed expression cracked, revealing fury beneath the polished surface. "You would choose her over your own mother?" "I'm not choosing anyone over anyone." Min-jae's voice didn't waver. "I'm setting boundaries that should have been set months ago. Kayla is my family. Olive is your granddaughter, whether you acknowledge her or not. And I will not tolerate you coming into my home and attacking the people I love." Color flooded his mother's face, a flush of rage and humiliation. She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned on her heel without another word. The door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the nearby picture frames, and Olive burst into startled tears. Keela moved automatically, scooping her daughter up and murmuring soft reassurances, while Olive buried her face in her mother's shoulder. Over the toddler's curls, Keela's eyes met Min-jae's. He looked exhausted, the adrenaline draining from him and leaving something hollow in its wake. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I should have taken that key back months ago." Keela wanted to say something, to acknowledge what he'd just done, but the words stuck in her throat. Because underneath the gratitude, underneath the validation of watching him defend her so fiercely, was the cold reality that had been growing in her mind for weeks. This would never end. His mother's hatred, the constant conflict, the knowledge that Keela's presence was tearing his family apart. Min-jae tried to approach her, to say something more, but Kayla turned away, focusing all her attention on calming Olive. "I need to put her down for her nap." She disappeared into Olive's room before he could respond, leaving Min-jae standing alone in the wreckage of the morning. The rest of the day passed in heavy silence. Min-jae retreated to his study for a work call that lasted hours. Keela moved through the penthouse like a ghost, playing with Olive, preparing lunch that neither adult ate, trying desperately not to think about the decision crystallizing in her mind. That evening, after Olive was asleep, and Min-jae was still locked in his study, Keela sat alone in the living room. The space felt enormous around her, all gleaming surfaces and expensive furniture that she'd never chosen. Beautiful, elegant, and absolutely suffocating. The thoughts came in a relentless loop. She was causing problems between Min-jae and his mother. His family would never accept her. She was financially dependent with no power to change anything. Every time she tried to assert herself, it led to conflict. Maybe everyone would be better off if she left. Not forever. She wouldn't take Olive away from Min-jae completely. They could co-parent, maintain separate lives, give him the chance to repair things with his family, without her presence constantly causing friction. The decision should have felt devastating. Instead, it arrived with a kind of cold clarity that scared her more than the pain would have. She'd leave, pack up her and Tessa's things, find an apartment she could afford on her teaching salary, establish the independence she should have insisted on from the beginning. It was the right choice, the logical choice. So why did it feel like giving up on everything she'd fought so hard to build? Keela pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapped her arms around them, and stared at nothing as the Seoul skyline glittered through the windows beyond. Somewhere in his study, Min-jae was probably drowning in work, using corporate problems to avoid thinking about personal ones. They'd chosen each other 7 months ago on a balcony, promising to fight for what they were building. But Keela was starting to wonder if love was enough when the world seemed determined to tear them apart. In her room, Olive slept peacefully, unaware that her mother was contemplating upending their lives again. Unaware that the family she'd brought together was fracturing under pressures neither parent knew how to handle. Keela closed her eyes and tried not to think about the suitcases stored in the closet, about how many of her belongings would actually fit, about where she and Tessa would go. She tried not to think about anything at all, but the decision had already been made. 2 days crawled by with the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Min-jae left for work early and returned late, the distance he maintained feeling both necessary and unbearable. Keela moved through her teaching day on autopilot, smiling at her students, while her mind spun in circles she couldn't escape. At home, they were painfully polite, passing Olive between them with careful coordination, discussing logistics in neutral tones, existing in the same space while miles apart. Mrs. Shin watched them with worried eyes, but said nothing, her usual warm chatter subdued. Tessa came by on Tuesday evening, took one look at the atmosphere, and pulled Keela aside. What happened? Nothing, Keela lied. Her sister's expression said she didn't believe it for a second, but she didn't push. Instead, she played with Olive while Keela prepared dinner that Min-jae texted to say he'd miss because of a meeting running late. By Wednesday afternoon, Min-jae couldn't take it anymore. The silence was eating him alive, and the careful distance Keela maintained felt like she was already halfway out the door. He needed to fix this, to bridge the gap somehow, even if he didn't fully understand what had broken. After his last meeting, he made a decision, a gesture, something to show her he was trying, that he heard her even if he didn't have all the answers yet. The flower shop in Gangnam was the kind of place Min-jae had never entered in his life. Elegant and sophisticated, filled with elaborate arrangements and exotic blooms. He stood in front of a display of roses, completely out of his element, trying to remember if Keela had ever mentioned a favorite flower. The peonies are beautiful this season, a sales assistant offered helpfully. Min-jae looked at the soft pink blooms and shook his head. Too delicate. Keela was strength-wrapped in grace, She deserved something bolder. His eyes landed on a mixed bouquet with deep red and orange tones, vibrant and unapologetic. Those, he decided. While the assistant wrapped them, Min-jae spotted the chocolates, premium Belgian imports in a navy box. He added those to his purchase, mentally composing what he'd say when he got home. An apology for not understanding sooner, a promise that they'd find a way to navigate this together, reassurance that he saw her as an equal, even if his actions hadn't always reflected that. He was so lost in thought that he didn't notice someone approaching, until a hand touched his shoulder. Min-jae turned, startled, and found himself face to face with Lee Seo-yeon. She was stunning in the way old money always managed to be. Tall and elegant in a cream designer dress, her hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless. For a fraction of a second, Min-jae registered objectively that she was beautiful. But she wasn't Keela. She didn't have the way Keela's entire face transformed when she laughed, or the fierce protectiveness that blazed in her eyes when she held Olive, or the vulnerability she tried so hard to hide beneath her strength. No amount of polish could compete with that. Min-jae. Seo-yeon's smile was warm, familiar in a way that made him uncomfortable. I thought that was you, buying flowers? Her eyes sparkled with something calculating. For me, perhaps? Finally coming to your senses about our arrangement? Min-jae actually laughed, the sound genuine and slightly incredulous. No, Seo-yeon, absolutely not. I have a woman I love and a beautiful daughter at home. These are for them. Something flickered across her face, quickly masked by a practiced smile. The American teacher and the baby, right? How? Domestic. The way she said domestic carried an edge, like she was commenting on something quaint and slightly beneath him. Domestic works for me, Min-jae said, his tone cooling. He took the wrapped flowers from the assistant and reached for his wallet. Seo-yeon leaned in slightly, her body language shifting to something subtly flirtatious. You know, the offer still stands. My father's company, your expertise. It would be a perfect partnership. We could be perfect together. Min-jae stepped back deliberately, creating space between them. His voice was polite, but absolutely final. I'm not interested. I've never been interested. I'm in love with Keela. I'm building a life with her and our daughter, and that's not going to change. Please stop pursuing this. Seo-yeon's smile tightened, but she recovered quickly. Of course, I understand. It was good seeing you, Min-jae. He paid quickly and left, unaware of the way Seo-yeon watched him go, her expression shifting into something thoughtful and cold. The drive home felt longer than usual, Min-jae's mind occupied with what he'd say, how he'd make this right. He'd been so focused on providing, on giving Keela and Olive everything they needed, that he'd somehow missed the point entirely. She didn't need him to take care of her. She needed him to stand beside her as an equal. He could do that. He would do that. But when Min-jae opened the penthouse door, flowers and chocolates in hand, his carefully prepared words died in his throat. Kayla stood in their bedroom, methodically folding clothes and placing them in an open suitcase. Tessa sat on the bed, tears streaming down her face, and Mrs. Shin hovered in the doorway, wringing her hands. Kayla, please, Mrs. Shin was saying. Just wait. Think about this. Everything can be worked out. I have thought about it, Kayla replied, her voice steady but hollow. This is what's best. The flowers nearly slipped from Min-jae's suddenly nerveless fingers. What are you doing? The question came out rough, barely controlled. Kayla finally looked at him, and the emptiness in her eyes terrified him more than anger would have. I'm leaving. I should have done this months ago. No. Min-jae crossed the room in strides, flowers forgotten on the dresser. No, you're not leaving. We can fix this. How? Kayla's composure cracked slightly. Your mother hates me. Every time I try to assert myself, it causes conflict. I'm financially dependent on you with no way to change that dynamic. I'm the reason your family is falling apart, Min-jae. Maybe if I leave, you can repair things with your mother, and we can figure out a co-parenting arrangement that doesn't destroy everything you've built. I don't care about what I've built if you're not in it. The words tore out of him, raw and honest. Kayla, please, don't do this. Tessa stood abruptly. I'll give you two some privacy. She practically fled the room, Mrs. Shin following with one last worried glance. Alone, Min-jae reached for Kayla's hands, stopping her mechanical folding. I know I haven't handled things right. I know I've been controlling and dismissive about your need for independence, but running away isn't the answer. I'm not running away. Kayla pulled her hands back. I'm making a rational decision based on the reality of our situation. The reality is that I love you. Min-jae's voice broke slightly. That I want to marry you, build a real future together, not this halfway existence where we're pretending everything's fine. Olive deserves to grow up in a home with both her parents, not shuttled between two houses because we were too afraid to fight for each other. Kayla's eyes filled with tears. I want that too, but I can't keep living like this, Min-jae. Your mother's hatred is poisoning everything. She looks at Olive like she's some kind of mistake, instead of the most beautiful thing I've ever created. And I'm so tired of feeling powerless in my own life. Then let's change it. Min-jae cupped her face gently, making her look at him. Let's sit down and figure out how to make this work, how to give you the agency you need. I'll add your name to everything. We'll open joint accounts, whatever it takes. But please don't leave. Don't give up on us. The suitcase sat open between them, half filled with clothes that represented a future Min-jae couldn't bear to imagine. Kayla closed her eyes, tears spilling over. When she opened them again, something had softened. I don't know if that's enough. Your mother is never going to accept me. And Olive, she deserves to know her grandmother, not be rejected because of who her mother is. My mother will come around, Min-jae said, with more confidence than he felt. Or she won't, and we'll build our family without her. But we do it together, Kayla, as partners, as equals. Please. The word hung in the air between them, weighted with everything they'd built, and everything they stood to lose. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Kayla nodded slowly. Okay, but things have to change, Min-jae. Really change, not just promises that fade when the crisis passes. They will. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. I promise they will. Over her shoulder, he could see the flowers he'd bought, already wilting slightly in their wrapping. A grand gesture that had arrived too late, rendered meaningless by nearly arriving to an empty home. He'd come so close to losing everything. Kayla pulled back eventually, wiping her eyes. I need some air. I'm going to take a walk. Min-jae wanted to argue, to keep her close, but he forced himself to nod. Okay, take your time. After she left, he stood staring at the suitcase for a long moment before slowly beginning to unpack it, returning each piece of clothing to its place, like he could undo the near disaster through sheer will. Mrs. Shin appeared in the doorway. Is she staying? For now, Min-jae said quietly. But I almost lost her. I almost lost them both. The older woman's expression was kind but knowing. Then make sure it doesn't happen again. 2 days passed. The suitcase disappeared back into the closet, but the tension remained, lighter than before, but still present. Kayla seemed to be waiting, watching to see if Min-jae's promises would materialize into action. On Friday, during his lunch break, Min-jae was surprised when his assistant informed him that Lee Seo-yeon was in the lobby, asking to speak with him briefly. Against his better judgment, he agreed. It was a public space, a brief conversation. He could make it clear one final time that there would never be anything between them. The cafe downstairs from his office building was busy with the lunch rush. Seo-yeon had already claimed a corner table, 2 cups of coffee waiting. "I took the liberty," she said, gesturing to the coffee as he sat down. "I remember you take it black." "Seo-yeon, if this is about the arrangement again, the answer is still no." "I know." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I just wanted to apologize for the other day at the flower shop. I was inappropriate, and I'm sorry. Your happiness clearly lies elsewhere." Min-jae relaxed slightly. "I appreciate that, and I hope you find someone who makes you happy too." "Maybe I will." Seo-yeon tilted her head. "Can I ask you something, though? Are you really happy, or are you just committed to making it work because of the child?" "I'm happy because I'm with someone who sees me, not just the company or the family name. Someone who challenges me to be better." Min-jae's voice was firm. "Olive brought us together, but I'm choosing Keela every day because I love her." They talked for another 10 minutes, the conversation surprisingly civil. Seo-yeon asked about his work, mentioned her own projects, and eventually checked her watch and stood to leave. "I'm glad we could have this conversation," she said. "Closure is important." Min-jae agreed, already thinking about getting back to work, unaware of the photographer in the opposite corner who'd been carefully angling shots of their entire interaction. Unaware, but that across town, his mother was already receiving the first images, a cruel smile spreading across her face as she reviewed the photographer's work, unaware that in 3 days, everything would explode. 3 days later, on a quiet Monday afternoon, Keela sat on the sofa in the penthouse, exhausted from a particularly challenging day with her students. Olive played on the floor with her blocks, singing to herself in the made-up language of toddlers. The doorbell rang. Keela frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone, and deliveries usually went through building security first. But she stood, smoothing down her comfortable clothes, and went to answer it. A delivery person stood at the door, holding a large brown envelope. "Keela Morrison?" "Yes?" "Package for you. Please sign here." Keela signed automatically, taking the envelope with growing confusion. She hadn't ordered anything recently. The envelope was unmarked, except for her name written in elegant script. She closed the door and returned to the living room, turning the envelope over in her hands. Something about it made her uneasy, but she couldn't identify what. Setting it on the coffee table, she carefully opened the seal. A folded note slipped out first, landing on the floor. Keela picked it up and unfolded it. The handwriting was beautiful, precise, and the words made her blood run cold. "Did you really think you could keep him? That forcing a baby on him would be enough? He's never stopped wanting me. The pictures prove everything. He told me himself he doesn't love you and is only waiting until the brat is old enough to throw you back to whatever slum you crawled from. You were never good enough for him. You were just convenient. Know your place, or I'll make sure you're removed from it." Keela's hands shook violently. The cruelty of the words was breathtaking, each one carefully chosen to wound. Her mind raced. Who would send this? What pictures? With trembling fingers, she reached into the envelope and pulled out a stack of photographs. The world tilted sideways. Min-jae and a beautiful Korean woman at a flower shop, her hand on his arm. The same woman across from him at a cafe, both of them smiling, leaning close over coffee cups. Another photo that appeared to show them holding hands, their body language intimate and familiar. The woman was stunning, elegant, everything Keela wasn't, and never could be in this world that had never been meant for her. A sound escaped Keela's throat, something between a gasp and a sob. The photograph slipped from her nerveless fingers, scattering across the floor like evidence of a crime she'd been too stupid to see coming. No, 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 no. The room spun violently. Keela couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process anything beyond the images burned into her mind. Min-jae with another woman. Min-jae lying to her. Min-jae telling someone else that he didn't love her. That Olive was just an obligation he was waiting to escape. Her chest constricted painfully. Black spots danced across her vision. The floor rushed up to meet her. The last thing Keela heard before darkness claimed her was Olive's confused "Creed-eye." And then there was nothing. Besties, my heart is breaking right now. The woman who survived a deadly heart condition, who fought to stay alive for her daughter, just collapsed because she thinks the man she loves betrayed her. And Min-jae doesn't even know yet. He's out there thinking everything's fine while Keela's world is shattering. But here's the real question. Will she even wake up? And if she does, how does Min-jae fix the trust he's just lost? How do you convince someone you didn't betray them when the evidence looks that damning? If you're feeling the tension right now, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story. Because what happens when Min-jae discovers what his mother did is going to absolutely wreck you. The pain, the rage, the desperation to fix what's been broken. You need to see this. Let's get back to it. Mrs. Shin had been in the kitchen preparing ingredients for dinner when she heard the scream. The sound cut through the quiet afternoon like a blade, followed by Keela's anguished voice crying out in denial. The older woman dropped the vegetables she'd been washing and ran. What she found in the living room made her own scream catch in her throat. Keela lay crumpled on the floor, photographs scattered around her like accusatory evidence. Olive stood near her mother, crying with the particular terror of a child who doesn't understand why the person who always comforts her won't wake up. "Keela!" Mrs. Shin dropped to her knees, checking for a pulse, her fingers shaking. It was there, steady, but rapid. Keela's breathing was shallow, her face tear-streaked, her eyes closed. "Tessa! Tessa, I need you!" Tessa emerged from her room where she'd been doing homework, took one look at the scene, and immediately grabbed her phone with one hand while scooping up Olive with the other. "What happened?" "I don't know. Call an ambulance." Mrs. Shin cradled Keela's head gently, murmuring reassurances, even though the younger woman couldn't hear them. Tessa's fingers flew across her phone screen, speaking rapidly to emergency services while trying to soothe Olive, who was sobbing against her shoulder. As soon as she finished that call, she dialed Min-jae. He answered on the first ring. "Tessa, is everything okay?" Keela collapsed. Tessa's voice shook. "We're calling an ambulance. You need to get to Seoul General Hospital now." She heard something crash on his end of the line. "What? What happened?" "I don't know. I found her on the floor. There are pictures everywhere, and she's unconscious and—" "I'm on my way." The line went dead. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics swarmed into the penthouse, checking Keela's vitals, asking questions. Mrs. Shin tried to answer through her panic. Tessa gathered Olive's essentials with practiced efficiency, her hands steady, even as tears streamed down her face. As the paramedics loaded Keela onto a stretcher, Mrs. Shin bent to gather the scattered photographs, wanting to remove them from Olive's sight. The moment she saw the images, her face went pale. She looked at the cruel note still lying on the coffee table, and understanding crashed over her with sickening clarity. Someone had done this deliberately. Someone had set out to destroy Keela's trust, and they'd succeeded with devastating efficiency. Mrs. Shin carefully collected every photograph and the note, sliding them back into the brown envelope. Whatever this was, Min-jae would need to see it. The hospital was chaos. Doctors and nurses moved with swift efficiency, running tests on Keela's heart, checking for signs of another cardiac episode, monitoring every vital sign with intense focus. Her medical history made everything more urgent, the specter of her previous illness hanging over every decision. Tessa sat in the waiting area with Olive, who had finally cried herself into exhausted sleep. Mrs. Shin paced, the envelope clutched in her hands like evidence of a crime. When Min-jae burst through the hospital doors 30 minutes later, his hair disheveled and his tie askew, they both turned toward him. The look on his face was pure devastation. "Where is she? How is she?" "They're running tests," Tessa said, her voice flat. "They think it was a panic attack, but with her heart condition, they're being careful." Min-jae sank into a chair, his head dropping into his hands. "What happened? Was she sick this morning?" The silence that greeted his question made him look up. Mrs. Shin and Tessa were staring at him with expressions he couldn't decipher. Disappointment from Mrs. Shin. Something colder from Tessa. "What?" Dread pooled in his stomach. "What is it?" Mrs. Shin wordlessly handed him the envelope. Min-jae pulled out the contents with shaking hands. The note came first, and with each word he read, his face went progressively paler. Then the photographs. Him and Seo-yeon at the flower shop, at the cafe. Images that had been manipulated to look intimate. Damning. The envelope fell from his hands as realization slammed into him. "This isn't real." His voice was barely a whisper. "These photos, they're real but not. I did see her, but not like this. It was nothing. I told her I wasn't interested. This is all taken out of context and—" "Tell that to Keela," Tessa said quietly, her voice tight with emotion. "Tell that to my sister who's lying in a hospital bed right now, thinking you betrayed her with someone who actually belongs in your world." The words hit like physical blows. Min-jae stood abruptly, the photographs scattering at his feet. "I need to. I have to." He didn't finish the sentence, just turned and walked out of the waiting room, with the envelope clutched in his white-knuckled grip. In the stairwell, Min-jae pulled out his phone and called Lee Seo-yeon. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and pleasant. "Min-jae, what a surprise." "You did this." His voice was shaking with fury. "You and my mother. You set me up, took photos out of context, sent them to Keela with that vicious note. She's in the hospital right now because of what you did." Silence on the other end. "I could have you arrested," Min-jae continued, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "Harassment, stalking, causing emotional distress. I have resources you can't imagine, and enough rage to use every single one of them. So I'm going to say this once. Stay away from me. Stay away from my family. If you come near any of us again, if you contact Keela or send anything else, I will destroy you. Do you understand me?" More silence. Then a quiet click as Seo-yeon disconnected. Min-jae didn't waste time. He was already dialing his driver, already moving toward the exit. He had one more confrontation to handle before he could even think about how to fix what had been broken. His parents' house looked exactly as it always had, elegant and cold and utterly unwelcoming. Min-jae didn't bother knocking, just used his key and walked in. His mother was in the sitting room, a cup of tea in her hands. She looked up as he entered, her expression carefully neutral. "Min-jae, what a—" "How could you?" The envelope hit the coffee table with enough force to rattle the delicate china. "How could you do this to her? To an innocent woman who's done nothing but love me and raise our daughter?" His mother's face remained impassive. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," Min-jae's voice cracked. "I know you orchestrated this. You and Seo-yeon, setting me up, manipulating photos, sending that horrible note to Keela. She's in the hospital right now, collapsed from the shock of thinking I betrayed her, and it's your fault. Perhaps she wouldn't be so fragile if she belonged in your world to begin with." His mother set down her teacup with deliberate care. "This was for your own good, Min-jae. That woman will never be suitable. She's not Korean. She doesn't understand our culture. She trapped you with that child. Stop calling her that woman, and stop calling Olive that child. Min-jae was shouting now, years of controlled composure finally shattering. Her name is Keela, and she's the woman I love. Our daughter's name is Olive, and she's your granddaughter, whether you acknowledge her or not. And I am done letting you poison my life because you can't accept that I chose differently than you wanted. His mother stood, her own control slipping. You're throwing away everything your father and I built for you, everything we sacrificed, all for some American teacher who will never understand what it means to be a Kang. Then I don't want to be a Kang. The words hung in the air like a detonation. I don't want a legacy built on manipulation and cruelty. I don't want a family that requires me to destroy the people I love to maintain some image of perfection. Keela is in a hospital bed right now, thinking I betrayed her, and it's because of you. Tears were streaming down Min-jae's face now, his voice breaking. I will never forgive you for this. Never. You've lost me. You've lost any chance of knowing your granddaughter. And I hope whatever satisfaction you got from this was worth it. He turned to leave, his vision blurred with tears. Min-jae. A different voice, deeper and calm. His father stood in the doorway to his study, and for the first time in Min-jae's memory, the older man's face was set with something harder than his usual peaceful resignation. What your mother did was unforgivable. Min-jae's father looked at his wife with disappointment sharp enough to cut. I've stood by while you pushed and manipulated and tried to control our son's life. I won't stand by anymore. Min-jae's mother's eyes widened. You don't understand what's at stake. I understand that you've driven our son to tears. The older man's voice remained steady. I understand that there's a young woman in the hospital because you were too proud to accept that our son fell in love with someone you didn't choose. I understand that we have a granddaughter we've never properly met because you were too concerned with appearances to embrace the gift of family. He turned to Min-jae. I spoke with the Lee family this afternoon. The arrangement is canceled, officially and permanently. I should have done it months ago. Something in Min-jae's chest loosened slightly. Thank you. Don't thank me for doing what should have been done from the start. His father's expression gentled. Now go back to the hospital. Stand firm. Don't break now. That's what they'll expect. Show Keela that you're worth fighting for. Min-jae nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat, and left. When he returned to the hospital, a nurse informed him that Keela was awake and stable in room 412. Relief flooded through him as he hurried down the corridor. He pushed open the door to find Keela sitting up in bed, staring at the wall. Mrs. Shin had taken Olive home. Only Tessa remained, sitting vigil in the corner. The moment Keela saw Min-jae, her face transformed. Get out! Keela, please, let me explain. Get out! She was crying now, her voice rising. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear your excuses. You looked me in the eye and lied. You stood in our home and made promises while seeing her behind my back. I wasn't seeing her behind your back. Those photos are real, but they're manipulated, taken out of context. I ran into her at the flower shop when I was buying you flowers, and she showed up at my office, and I met her for coffee to tell her one final time that I wasn't interested. It meant nothing, Keela. It was all staged by her and my mother to hurt you. How convenient. Keela's laugh was bitter. Of course it was all innocent. Of course you did nothing wrong. I'm just crazy for believing what I saw with my own eyes. You saw what they wanted you to see. Min-jae tried to move closer, and Tessa stood, positioning herself protectively near her sister. Please, just listen. No, Kayla's voice was final. I'm done listening. I'm done believing. When I'm discharged, I'm taking Olive and Tessa and we're leaving. You can have your perfect Korean life without us complicating it. Kayla, get out! She was sobbing now, her monitors beeping in alarm. "Get out! Get out! Get out!" A nurse rushed in, saw the situation, and firmly asked Min-jae to leave. He stumbled out into the hallway, his legs barely supporting him, and somehow made it to his car. In the driver's seat, Min-jae finally broke. Tears poured down his face as he gripped the steering wheel, his entire body shaking with sobs. The woman he loved thought he'd betrayed her. His family was falling apart, and he had no idea how to fix any of it. The next 3 days were torture. Min-jae tried to visit Keela every day, bringing food, flowers, desperate apologies. She refused to see him each time. On the 4th day, Min-jae sat in his penthouse, hollow and defeated, when Mrs. Shin appeared. "I believe you," she said simply. Min-jae looked up, surprise cutting through his exhaustion. "What? I've worked for you for 8 years. I've never seen you with a woman until Keela. You're disciplined, loyal, and completely in love with that girl. Those photos are a setup." Mrs. Shin sat down across from him. "And tomorrow, I'm going to tell her that." True to her word, Mrs. Shin visited the hospital the next morning with homemade food and quiet determination. She sat beside Kayla's bed and spoke with the authority of someone who'd earned the right to be heard. "I know you're hurting. I know those photos looked damning, but I also know Min-jae, and that man would cut off his own arm before hurting you." Mrs. Shin took Keela's hand gently. "Think about it. If he didn't want you, why accept you and Olive in the first place? Why fight his entire family? Why rearrange his whole life around being present for you both?" Kayla was crying again, but softer now. "What if I'm wrong? What if I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, and he really did? Then I'm wrong too. And I'm willing to risk being wrong, because walking away now means his mother and that awful woman win. Are you really going to hand them victory?" Before Keela could respond, there was a knock on the door. It opened to reveal Min-jae's father, distinguished and kind-faced, and utterly unexpected. Keela recognized him immediately from the video calls he'd made when she'd been discharged after her first illness. The only member of Min-jae's family willing to see his granddaughter, to congratulate them both on Keela's recovery. He'd stayed in the shadows of his wife's disapproval, quiet in his support, but Kayla had always known he cared. That knowledge had been a small comfort when his wife's hatred felt suffocating. "Mrs. Shin?" He bowed respectfully, his face breaking into a warm smile. "It's good to see you again." "Mr. Kang." Mrs. Shin stood and embraced him warmly. "It's been too long." He turned to Keela, and his expression immediately softened with concern and relief. Without hesitation, he crossed the room and gently pulled her into a fatherly embrace. "I'm so glad you're recovering. When I heard what happened, what my wife did, I couldn't stay away any longer." Keela felt tears prick her eyes at the unexpected warmth, the genuine care in his voice. He pulled back, studying her face with kind eyes, then settled into the chair beside her bed with a heavy sigh. "First, I need to apologize. I should have stood up to my wife months ago when she started pushing this arrangement. I should have supported my son's choice from the beginning. I was a coward, and you paid the price for my cowardice. Mr. Kang, please, let me finish." He smiled gently. "I spoke with the Lee family. The arrangement is officially canceled. There will be no marriage, no merger, no pressure on Min-jae. It's done." Relief crashed over Keela so powerfully it made her dizzy. "My son loves you." The older man's voice was firm. "I've watched him grow into a man of honor and integrity. He would never do something to bring shame or disgrace to his family, and more importantly, he would never betray the woman he loves. I've never seen him like this. Never seen him willing to sacrifice everything for someone the way he has for you. He's been a shell of himself since this happened, barely eating, barely sleeping. Whatever those photos showed, Whatever that note said, it wasn't the truth. I know my son's character. I raised him, and I know with absolute certainty that he would never, ever betray you." Kayla's tears fell faster now. Min-jae's father reached out and took her hand in both of his, paternal and reassuring. "Don't punish him for something he didn't do," he said quietly, "and don't let the people who tried to hurt you win." After he left, Kayla sat in silence, Mrs. Shin's words and his father's plea echoing in her mind. For the first time since seeing those photos, she allowed herself to really think instead of just react. Min-jae had bought flowers that day. For her. The cafe meeting had been public, brief. He'd never hidden seeing Seo-yeon, never acted guilty or secretive. And everything his father said was true. If Min-jae didn't want her, why fight so hard to keep her? The next morning, the doctor came in for final discharge paperwork. "Everything looks good. Your heart function is normal. The panic attack didn't cause any lasting damage. Though there is one thing." He glanced at his chart. "During our tests, we discovered you're approximately 3 weeks pregnant." The world stopped. Keela stared at him, unable to process the words. "What?" "Pregnant. Early stages, but definitely pregnant. Given your cardiac history, we'll want to monitor you closely. But congratulations." Pregnant. Again. After everything with her heart, after nearly dying the first time, after everything that had just happened. Terror and joy warred in her chest, leaving her breathless. The door opened, and Min-jae walked in, dark circles under his eyes, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "I know you said you didn't want to see me, but I heard you were being discharged, and I needed to." "Congratulations, Mr. Kang," the doctor said cheerfully. 3 weeks along. We'll want to schedule regular monitoring given Ms. Morrison's medical history, but everything looks healthy so far." Min-jae froze, his eyes going wide as they darted between the doctor and Kayla. "Pregnant?" Kayla burst into tears. Min-jae was across the room in an instant, pulling her into his arms as she sobbed against his chest. All the walls she'd built over the past days crumbled completely, leaving only raw emotion and the truth she'd been trying to deny. She believed him. She'd always believed him, deep down. She had just been too hurt and scared to admit it. "I'm sorry," she gasped between sobs. "I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have known." "Shh, it's okay." Min-jae held her tighter, his own voice thick with emotion. "I should have told you about seeing Seo-yeon. I should have been more transparent. But Kayla, I need you to hear me." He pulled back just enough to cup her face, making her look at him. "You are the only woman I want. The only woman I've ever truly loved. Those photos were a setup designed to hurt you, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that again. I believe you." Keela's hands came up to cover his. "I believe you. I want to fight for this." Min-jae kissed her forehead, her cheeks, whispering promises against her skin. The doctor quietly excused himself, leaving them alone in their reunion. 2 weeks later, the dining table in Min-jae's penthouse was set for a celebration. Keela sat beside Min-jae, his hand resting possessively on her thigh, under the table. Olive was in her high chair, banging a spoon and giggling. Tessa sat across from them, grinning with relief. Mrs. Shin fussed over the food, making sure Keela ate enough, and at the head of the table, Min-jae's father beamed with grandfatherly pride. The only empty seat was Min-jae's mother's. Her husband had asked her to come, but she'd refused, too proud to save face. Her absence was noted, but not mourned. As dessert was being served, Min-jae stood. The table quieted. He pulled a small ring box from his pocket and turned to Keela. Her eyes went wide. Min-jae knelt beside her chair, opening the box to reveal a simple, stunning ring. "I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to spend another day without you as my partner in every way that matters. Keela Morrison, will you marry me? Not because of obligation or arrangement, but because I choose you. Because I will always choose you. Keela's hands flew to her mouth, tears spilling over as she nodded frantically. Yes. Yes, of course, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her as the table erupted in cheers and applause. Tessa wiped her eyes, grinning through her own tears. Mrs. Shin clapped with delight. Min-jae's father raised his glass in a toast. Even Olive joined in, clapping her little hands and squealing with joy. Min-jae pulled back from the kiss, but kept Keela close, their foreheads touching. I love you, he whispered, just for her. More than anything in this world. I love you too, Keela whispered back. Even when it terrifies me, even when it's hard, I love you. Then we'll figure out the rest together. And for the first time since that envelope arrived, Keela believed it completely. They would face Min-jae's mother's disapproval, though perhaps in time she would soften and find the courage to apologize. They would navigate whatever this new pregnancy would bring, but they'd do it together, as equals, as partners, as family. Outside the windows, Seoul glittered under the night sky. Inside, surrounded by the people who loved them, Min-jae and Keila held each other close and chose, once again, to fight for the messy, imperfect, beautiful life they were building together. If you'd love more stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support truly makes a difference. Now I want to hear from you. If you received those fake photos of someone you loved, would you believe them or trust your partner? Could you forgive someone who didn't trust you, even though the evidence looked damning? And honestly, would you have left like Keila planned, or stayed and fought through the doubt? Leave your answers in the comments. I read them all and truly enjoy hearing what you think. Let me know where you're watching from and what kinds of love stories you enjoy. Thank you for being with Min-jae and Keila through every heartbreak, every confrontation, and every beautiful moment of choosing love. I'll see you in the next story, and trust me, it's one worth staying for. Until then, remember that real love never backs down from a fight, and that kind of love is always worth holding on to.